everybody. Welcome to the Evening Reader. I'm Priscilla, and here I am. Gonna try to talk without coughing or squeaking or any of those things like I did in the last video that I made that I did not post. It's good to maybe be back. We'll see how this goes. As you can see, I'm still like throat clearing and doing things. I thought everything was cleared up, and I went to my Dutch class last night after not coughing at all yesterday. And then, of course, the minute I sit down in my Dutch class, I start to cough, and not like a like a delicate ladylike cough, but like yeah, like 5-pack a day smoker kind of cough. And I don't smoke, and I've never smoked in my life, so it was just kind of disconcerting. Anyway, good times. So here I am, gonna try to do my July wrap up, and I'm gonna try not to take, an hour to do it, because I've already talked about what I read at the beginning of July. So this is really just a wrap up for what I ended the month with, and that I read 3 books at the end of the month. I think I read 7 books total in August. What month is it? I read 7 books total in July. And I think the last time we talked about July reading, I was reading this and In Ascension by Martin McInnes. And I think I had talked at one point about possibly DNFing this book, even though I was about halfway through it. I was doing a buddy read with a subscriber, Ed, and I think he was reading McInnes's other book, Infinite Ground, I think it was called, and he wasn't really getting on with it, and I didn't feel like I was really getting on with In Ascension either, and so we kind of scrapped that buddy read. And I said, well, I'm going to see how it goes, and I'll decide if I'm going to DNF it. And weirdly enough, at around like the 200, 250 page mark, it got quite enjoyable and engaging. And I actually really ended up enjoying it. So that was surprising. I will leave links below because I know that Eric, Karl Anderson and Willow at Books and Bow both sang this book's praises and really, really loved it. Eric loved it so much that he said that he read it and then went right back to the beginning and started reading it again, which is high praise indeed. I can understand why he would maybe want to read it again after having actually read it now. I think it would probably yield some new details on a reread, but yeah, so I guess I should just talk about the book a little bit, and then it will make more sense if I talk about that. So In Ascension follows the character Lee. It is told from her point of view in the first person, and it starts with Lee. She is born in the Netherlands. She lives in Rotterdam, and her parents are Geert, I get my Dutch going, and Fenna. And Fenna is a mathematician. She's an academic. She's somebody who's very involved in her academic career and who is, I guess you'd call her maybe like an absent-minded professor type. She's very cerebral and not emotional, sort of distant. Geert is the father. He wanted to be an architect. He's kind of had frustrations around that. He actually ended up going to work for the agency, the water authority that controls all the water levels around Rotterdam and in that part of the Netherlands. And water is a big cover of the book. Water plays a big role in Lee deciding that she wants to become a marine biologist. She and her younger sister, Helena, she has a younger sister, 3 years younger, spend a lot of time at the river and the beaches on the river and the north beaches of the Netherlands. And in the river is where she first sort of discovers life underwater and sort of starts to think about the possibilities of escaping her life above water, where she is dealing with physical abuse from her father. Not sexual abuse, just plain physical abuse. And her mother is sort of just absent, doesn't do anything to protect her. And Lee feels that she sort of takes the abuse and acts as a protector for her sister, so her father won't abuse her sister. Uh, this abuse goes on, I guess, from the time Lee is maybe 8 or 9 years old. I'm trying to remember because I don't remember the first part of the book as well as the last part of the book, until she's maybe in her early teens. And, I think maybe it's just old enough to, and her father is then older too, and their dynamics change. And she does eventually go to university and become a marine biologist. The thing about Lee is that we don't really learn a lot about her, even though the book is in first person. From her point of view, there's a lot of her life that is not on the page. There's a great deal that gets skipped. The early part of the book deals very much with her family dynamics and her young life. And then the next time we meet her, she's already gone through university and is, we see her have some time with her mother before she goes on this trip to on a ship called the Endeavor, and then that's when we really start to see her more in her present time and working as a scientist. She's really sort of more like a student scientist, and she goes on this ship called the Endeavor. She's sort of working as part of the crew, but then also helping with some parts of the research and in the labs. And as it goes, it turns out that this research trip that she's on to study a certain part of the ocean, she finds out that there's sort of a secret mission that they're on, that there is a new trench in the ocean that has opened, and that the Endeavor wants to study what's happening with this volcanic trench. And they have also developed a underwater sea vessel that can go to great depths. And one of the reasons they want to test this underwater sea vessel here on this trench is that they want also to be able to use this a sort of underwater vessel to explore the water on the moons of Jupiter, I believe it is. So this is set. Excuse me. There it is. Present day, and in the near future. So but I think it's kind of more of a parallel type of now and future. Sort of like, I guess maybe like The Martian would be, because they have they discover, for example, they discover that they can start to travel at the speed of light. They can travel much faster. That's one of the developments that happens in this book. And so I think when the book ends, it's around 2040. And I'm sort of rambling now. Where was I? Anyway, she's on the ship. She becomes part of the research team that actually dives down and starts to explore this area where this volcanic trench is. And part of what she is looking for are microorganisms that are said to exist in the water here, that are organisms that originated at the time of the Big Bang and at the formation of Earth, and sort of a microorganism that is the basis of all life. So she's very involved in that research. And then Oh, wow. This isn't any better than Friday. All right, hang on just one second. Okay, let's try again. Got a little sip of something. Maybe that'll help. So she's part of this research, and it has a profound effect on her. And the findings also have a profound effect on, well, I don't know. I don't know how much to give away. Anyway, we sort of fast forward after that 2 years later, and she is invited to be part of a research project in China Lake in California. That is sort of a top secret thing that they're doing. And just long story short, it's going to involve people going into space because Voyager has received a signal from something in the outer space that they believe is trying to communicate with Earth. And it also has something to do with this trench that is opened on the bottom of the ocean. And Lee gets called in to actually use part of her research on the microorganism that she found near the trench. She's been using that to grow algae, or to see if she can use it to extend the life of algae that she's growing, so that the people who are going into space will have a food source on their ships, a sustainable food source on their ships. And so she does this research, and she is there, and she gets very involved. And then she actually finally gets sort of recruited to be part of the mission team and go into space to investigate what has happened with Voyager and this communication signal, and so on and so forth. And I don't want to give too much of it away. And also, it was kind of complicated. And also, some of that was still at the part where I was not sure if I was going to finish. That makes it kind of more difficult to talk about a book when you're not fully invested, and then all of a sudden you do become fully invested. So she goes through intense training. She goes through some really intense training in order to become an astronaut. And then she does end up going out into space. And that's really kind of all that I can tell you, because I don't want to give the rest of it away. Near the end of the book, there is a shift in point of view to another character. And it sheds some light on Lee and her mission and what she was doing, and also her early life. And it's very interesting because, I mean, I would say part of the reason why in the early part of this book I was not so invested was because I just didn't feel engaged with Lee. I didn't particularly like her. She has somewhat of a flat aspect. We don't really learn anything about her outside of her family relationships. In the early part of the book, we don't hear about any friendships. We don't hear about any teachers. When we don't really get any part of her university life, and then even between the time of her time on the Endurance and then her time in California, she has a 2-year relationship with a woman, and we hear almost nothing about this relationship. So she sort of exists in a vacuum, and because of that, we only really ever see her interacting with her sister. And so much of how she interacts with her sister, and then we also see her interacting with her mother also, it's all still so tied to her youth, and it's all still so wrapped up in that time and in those dynamics that it's very sort of hard to understand who Lee is. And she becomes, I want to say, she's the most likable when she is involved in her work. She is the most dynamic. She's the most interesting when she's talking about her work and her research. And she is very, very invested in what she's doing. And I think that in the early part of the book, one of the other things that didn't quite work for me was that McInnes himself, or the way that he's written it, in the early part of the book, there are some sections where Lee sort of begins to wax rhapsodic about, life and the meaning of life and, what's underwater and what's out in space. And it just, I just want to say it's really kind of, it's just, to me, it was overwritten. It was just a bit too much. It just felt like it was trying to drop in some kind of profound literary statement that I just didn't really feel like the book required that. Um, and then the other thing that it tends to do a lot of in the first part is there's a lot of science, a lot of complex science, and a lot of information dumping. And I don't necessarily know that we needed all that either. I think the book could have done without it. Now, this is where I would say maybe I would want to go back and reread it again and see if it bothers me as much. But then if it doesn't bother me just because I've read the whole book, I don't know that that actually makes that better or how somebody else would experience that. But I had a lot of tabs, as you can see, a lot more tabs in the first half of the book. And a lot of these tabs are sort of like where I'm like, this is like, I'm marking some passages of purple prose, or I've got some things that say what or huh, because there are parts where I just get lost. It just sort of goes off, and I don't know. But that second half of the book, where especially when she's in California and she's in China Lake, and then when she's doing her research, and then when she joins the team to go into space, and then she does go into space, I have to say that it was just so highly engaging. And I feel like it's because McInnes had action. He had action, he had scenes, there was engaging interaction, whether it was between her and her research, her and her supervisor, her and her two partners the astronauts that she goes into space with the ship itself, when she's thinking about what it is that she's trying to do or what they're trying to accomplish. It really just, it was highly engaging. And it was as well, more so when she was on the Endeavor. But when he just sort of has her alone and really then starting to sort of go off into this philosophical bent, or when she starts again in on her family dynamics, it drags a bit. And yeah, it didn't quite sing as much as the second half of the book did for me. So I would say, if you liked, say, like, if you've liked maybe Ted Chiang, or if you liked the movie Arrival, I feel like this has some similar, it deals with some similar questions, and some similar it has a similar impetus to why it is that they want to go out into space, then and understand what's happening and how it is connected to the trench that's opened at the bottom of the ocean, because they are pretty sure that it is. um then I would say give it a shot. I think it would be worth it to give it a shot. And like I said, I'll link to Willow and Eric's videos below, because they both gave it 5 stars and really, really loved it. And so you may get something more out of their experience than, hearing my review. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good though. So I'm happy that I finished it. The next book that I read was Robert Gottlieb's Avid Reader. And I won't talk about this too long. I don't know how interesting this is. I mean, if you like to read books about books, if you are interested in book publishing and editing, then wow, you should read this. It reads like a who's who of publishing. For his early career, he worked at Simon & Schuster. He left Simon & Schuster and went to Knopf. He worked his way up at Knopf, and then eventually went to become the editor of The New Yorker, replacing William Shawn. And then he was replaced by Tina Brown at The New Yorker, and he went back to Knopf but just as an editor. Hearing about everybody that he knows, and I mean, he just knew everyone, was just very fascinating. And the behind the scenes work that they did on different books and how he worked with different authors was wonderful. I think one of the best things that I liked about this book was that Gottlieb really, even if it was an author or someone he worked with in the industry whom he had a falling out with, or who he parted ways with, he does not have really a negative word to say about anybody, which is just so rare. He shares a lot. He shares a great deal, and he even talks about himself and where he thinks, maybe that was me or maybe it was my fault. He's willing to own up or to look at what other people have to say about him. But it's very, I think it's unusual that most of the time when people want to do these memoirs, then there's always going to be maybe some kind of score to settle or something that they're going to need to say, but no, that doesn't happen here. So a really fascinating look at the publishing world. The surprising part for me, and the thing I had no idea about, was the work that he did with the City Ballet and how integral he was to the development of the City Ballet from the beginning, and how he was a huge ballet fan and really, really was in love with the work of Georges Balanchine. And that surprised me. I didn't realize that he was on the board for the City Ballet. And then he also went on to, I think it was the Miami Ballet or the Miami Civic Ballet, went on to be an integral part of helping to sort of revamp that and get funding going and really make that program grow and make it exciting. So there are several chapters on that were fascinating, and also that he got the opportunity to work with dancers like Margot Fontaine and on her memoir, and some other dancers as well. And so that was just really lovely and wonderful. I highly recommend that. If like I said, it's kind of a niche book, but if you're interested at all in books and publishing, it's definitely worth picking up, because it reads like a who's who. I don't know what else to tell you. And then finally, because I'm also trying to do this video because I have a meeting in like 5 minutes or 7 minutes. Trying to hurry. I read The Widows of Malabar Hill, which is the first in a series by Sujata Massey. The Praveen mystery is the name of the lawyer, the female lawyer. These are set in India, in Bombay. This one takes place in 1921. Actually, has a dual timeline, 1921 and 1916, 1917. In the present timeline, Praveen is working at her father's law firm, Mystery Law. She is the first female solicitor in Bombay, having been educated at Oxford. And at Oxford, she met her best friend, Alice. And her friend Alice, also her parents, her father, is one of the governors working for the British government in Bombay. And Praveen takes on a case of 4 widows who are the wives of a Muslim man who has passed away. And she gets involved because the mystery family is the manager of the estate, and she wants to make sure that the widows are going to get their due after she receives a visit, or a letter or a visit. I think it's a visit from the guardian, who is sort of taken over the household and taken over, I don't know what you call stewardship of these wives and their well-being, because they are, I'm not going to use the correct word, they are, but in the Western world, we would say they are cloistered. They don't go outside. They don't go out into the world. They stay inside with the children. So, she knows that they don't have any experience of the world, and so she wants to make sure that they are going to get their fair due. And then the guardian is murdered inside the house. So we have a murder mystery, and Perveen goes about trying to figure out what's happened. And we also go back in time to understand how Perveen got to be where she is today as a solicitor, and learn about her past and why she is doing what she's doing, and also why she is so concerned about the well-being of these widows. So this was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I learned a great deal. Perveen Mystery is also Parsi, so her family came from Iran or Persia to this part of India. But I think she says that they came in the 17th or 18th century. So her family's been there a long time, but they are still a minority population in Bombay. And so, you've got the excuse me, a lot of, it's my bookmark, it keeps popping out. You've got a lot of interesting, sorry, it's the cough and my brain is not working. Interesting tensions, I guess. I guess I would want to say tensions between Parsi, Muslim, Hindu, and Christian. And so there's just it's rich with a lot of detail from that time and that place. And that's just something, this is a time in India and a part of India that I don't know a lot about. Not that I know a great deal about India, but it's really fascinating. We learn a little bit about also what they went through in World War I. But this was really wonderful, and I've got the second book, and I'm really looking forward to reading that. So, highly recommend this, and I'm really happy that it's a series, and I'm definitely planning to read all of the books. Okay, so I think that's it for today, because I'm about to have a coughing fit. And I hope to be back on Friday, and I don't know if I'm going to be doing a tag video. I don't know if I'm going to be talking about what I'm currently reading. I can't really talk about what I'm currently reading because it's two buddy reads, and I can't talk about those things. So, but I've got other things on my mind, or maybe I'll just maybe I'll find a tag to do or something. But I will be back on Friday, and hopefully I will not be coughing. And I hope that you have a great week, and I will see you soon. Take care. Bye.